Welcome to the Life of Phys Podcast. I'm your host, Tyson Martin, and on this episode I have my friend Ibarionex Perello. Ibarionex is a photographer, writer, educator, and host of the Candid Frame Photography Podcast. He has over 25 years of experience in the photographic industry. He is currently the special projects photographer at the Huntington Art Museum in San Marino, California. I want to apologize for my audio in this episode as I had to resort to using my AirPods as I had a problem with my Rodecaster. Now let's hear a word from our podcast partner and get to the show.
The Life of Phys Podcast is lit by HoboLight. HoboLight is on a mission to empower creators to elevate their creativity with lighting kits made to last and built to inspire. These lights are bold, beautiful, and powerful because HoboLight believes that your lights deserve to be seen. To learn more, follow them on Instagram at HoboLite.
My name is Ibarionex Perello. I am a photographer based here in Southern California, near Pasadena. And currently I work as a special projects photographer at the Huntington Museum, Library, and Botanical Gardens in San Marino, one of the must-see destinations here in Southern California. And I've been in the photographic industry professionally since college, which is like 30 plus years. I'm trying to avoid actually counting years because it just makes me feel old. But it's been a while. But I've worked as a magazine editor, as a photographer, as an educator, written magazine articles freelance, and have written probably half a dozen books on the subject of photography. And I started as a result of being a member of a boys club of Hollywood in the East Hollywood area. And one of the counselors there was named Mike Cohen. And there had been a darkroom that had fallen into disuse in the club on the second floor. It was just across the street from the library, which he was responsible for. And he was into photography, so he fixed the darkroom, bought chemistry, bought paper. There were already enlargers there. There were these cameras left over from, I think, probably early 60s and 50s. Some of these sort of box cameras, like from mostly German made, probably. And he brought in a couple of freelance photojournalists in, a man and a woman, and they taught the kids how to load film into the camera, how to focus, set exposure, and later on another day, they came back and they showed us how to process the film and make prints. And when that first print appeared in the developing tray, I was sold. I was just like, this is just the coolest thing. And while the other kids kind of lost interest, I didn't. So anytime I would come to the club, I'd go to Mike and I'd ask for the key to the darkroom. And I'd go in there, I would load film into the camera, and I would walk around the club or outside in Hollywood making pictures, and then coming back to the darkroom to make prints. And I would spend all day there, losing lack of time. They would have to be knocking at the door, to sort of kick me out. And so that's kind of what spurred my interest in photography. And as a kid, eventually my dad let me use his camera, and I would put film in there, and then I'd give it to my mom. So when she would go to the Thrifty's drugstore, where is an old chain here in Southern California, where we would process our film and make prints, I would give her these rolls of film, and I couldn't wait until the next time we visited to be able to go through the film and the prints and see what I'd made. And it was in college, while I was at Los Angeles City College, which is a community college here in Southern California, that I joined the newspaper. And it was the first time I actually realized that maybe this is something that I could do, because I was writing articles and making photographs. And that eventually I became the photo editor and the executive editor for the newspaper. And it was really empowering, because not only was I doing these things, but increasingly I was given increasing levels of responsibility in terms of managing the staff and things like that. And it was very empowering. And then I transferred to Berkeley, where I got a degree in English Lit. And I didn't work on the paper up there, but I was still making photographs. I was the lab tech at the Graduate School of Journalism. But then after I graduated college, I moved back to Southern California. And within a short period of time, I landed a job at Nikon Inc., which at the time was in Torrance. And I became one of the technical support reps there, which were the group of people who would answer questions about gear when people called the 1-800 number. And at the time, I think there were probably 6. And we would just get calls from all across the country about the new equipment, about old equipment, questions about how to do this, why my pictures aren't turning out. And I would just spend all day talking photography with people. And then I got an opportunity to get back into writing when a position opened up at Outdoor Photographer magazine as an associate editor. And I left Nikon and I was there for 8 years. And that was great. That was a great gig too, because I was writing, I was making photographs, I was editing other photographers who were contributing work to the magazine, like Rick Salmon, who a lot of people may know. Was one of the people whose work I was kind of working with him with his monthly column. And of course, all the latest gear came through before it got announced, because the manufacturers would come and tell us what's coming, and then we'd get the chance to use it all. So I was using everything: Canon, Olympus, Pentax, Nikon, all the manufacturers, all the latest gear. And there was like a equipment locker, which we had at Nikon. So basically, when the weekend came, I could grab anything and go out and shoot. And at Nikon, I was really spoiled because I was there just before they really started transitioning to digital. And they encouraged us to use equipment, and they paid for film and processing. So I would grab rolls of film and we'd go shoot. And then they come back, dropped off the film, and I took advantage of that. I shot a lot of Kodachrome, Actochrome, little negative. Mostly I was a chrome guy. And when I was at the magazine, I could use anything. I wasn't sort of inclined to. I was often trying to use the new stuff because I was always very curious. But then after about 8 or 9 years, I left there just to go freelance. So I was like writing for different magazines at that point. I started teaching at Art Center College of Design as an adjunct, and started writing books. And I wrote my first book soon, probably a year after I left the magazine. And before I left the magazine, I'd already started the podcast, The Candid Frame, which I started in 2006. And
so you've been going a long time on that one.
Yeah. Because in 2005, I started hearing about this thing called podcasting. And I had a really long commute from Pasadena to the west side, which is like an hour going to work and an hour and a half coming back. That was on a good day. And I didn't want to listen to terrestrial radio. And I kind of had exhausted books on tape. And then I don't know how I found out about podcasting. And so I started listening to all these different shows, including all the photography ones. And at the time, it was Chris Marquardt's Tips from the Top Floor. There was Barton Bailey's Photography Podcast. Jeff Curto's History of Photography. And I think there was one more at the time. And I said, it would be good if someone, dedicated a show just to talk with photographers about photography, not talk about equipment, not talk about gear so much, but talk about the process. And I knew a bunch of photographers, and because of the kind of work that I did, I knew how to interview people. So all I had to figure out was what's a podcast? How do you record audio? How do you edit audio? How do you create a blog? What's an RSS feed? And this is before Apple came out with their podcast app. So it was like there are all these different applications that people had to download and use in order to be able to listen to podcasts. And you had to subscribe to an RSS feed. It wasn't just hit subscribe. It was like the wild, wild west. And
So what you're saying is I got lucky because
You got
everything was
lucky.
so easy.
Yeah. You got a bunch of YouTube videos you can watch to learn practically anything about
Yeah.
podcasting. That did not exist. So there was a lot of, finding articles online, reading them, and making a lot of mistakes. But eventually it got started. And it was one of those things that I kind of knew. I knew it would be successful. And by that, I didn't mean that it would be financially successful or that all of a sudden it would be just, I could quit my job and I could do this. No, I knew that there was an audience for it. And I knew that if I put it out there, there would be people that would listen to it. And that's what I meant by it would be successful. That there would be people out there who would really enjoy the conversations that I've had. And so now I'm continually been doing it since 2006. And I don't know what that is now. Is that 17 years? Maybe 18? I don't know. Whatever it is. I don't even, again, I'm not keeping count. I just know the year it started. And then, about 4 years ago, I started working for the museum. A friend of mine who was the head of photography at the time said, "Hey, you want to come work for me?" And I said, "Sure." Because the magazine work was dying. The magazines that I used to write for, I think they're all gone now. All the print magazines are gone.
Which is sad.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wrote for all of them at one point or another. But, when I found that I was getting asked to write the same article for less money, I might be able to make $1,200 in an article. Now I was being told that we can afford to pay you $200. That's not sustainable. Wasn't for me, Yeah. Yeah, and it takes the same amount of time to write all that stuff. So, So when the opportunity came to work at the museum, it was very cool. And John Sullivan, who's the one who hired me, I'd known him for a while now, and he's a very cool guy. And I really enjoyed the job. It's 20 minutes from my house, and there's no stress. They kind of give me the things that I'm responsible for photographing, and they leave me alone, which is great. And I don't have any sort of hard deadline to meet like I did at the magazines. So there isn't this these moments of high stress where everything's trying to get in and you're trying to meet the deadline and stuff like that. It's very, very relaxed. And I work with good people. And it's just a beautiful place to work because the gardens there are just gorgeous. And for my mental health, I make sure to try to take a walk, for 20 minutes, 15 to 20 minutes during my break, just to get away from the screen.
So important.
Yeah. So I think that kind of encompasses everything.
So I started shooting photos. I think I figured it out. It was 6 years ago. And it was just I started with a Nikon D3000 I got for my daughter as, okay, I'm going to try to shoot my kids and my dogs and just capture those quick moments. And then I made the mistake of finding long exposure photography with water. And I was like, I need to figure that out. So I went and spent, tons of time trying to figure out what an ND filter was and trying to figure out what I needed to do to get this water blur. And I probably shot 400 or 500 photos, and they were all nowhere near anything in focus. And then I got that one that was, I got the water blur. The rocks weren't in focus, but I got the water blur. And that just sent me on this path. After that, I needed to buy a real camera because, the D3000 at this point was 2019. So this thing was quite old at this point. So I walked in, and that's how I found Fujifilm. And I ended up with an X-T3, 18 to 55 and a 55 to 200. And now here I am.
Slippery slope.
Oh, yeah. It's, and I've run the gauntlet of Fujifilm. I've been through every body since the X-T3. And I've had the GFX line. And now I've settled on a single X-T5 as my do-it-all. And, and I love the cameras. So I know you're an ex-photographer. So how did that come about?
That's a good question. I think someone recommended me. I'm not sure who it was. One of my friends, Rinzi Ruiz, was an ex-photographer. He was one before I was. And so
I recognize the name.
Yeah, Rinzi's a photographer here in Los Angeles. It's amazing photographer. You'd be a good person to talk to for the show.
Okay. I'll add him to my notes.
Yeah. And, but they reached out to me. I had been an ambassador for Samsung because they had come out with a series of cameras and they reached out to me. So that's the first time I'd ever gotten involved in terms of direct relationship with the manufacturer. And, then they abruptly stopped making their cameras, which was kind of unfortunate, but, Fuji reached out to me and I talked to them and I spent some time talking to Rinzi about his relationship with them. And he glowed very positively about the people there, especially Stacy, who is like the point person for all of us photographers that are associated with the company. And I said, yeah, I'm open to it. And I really have enjoyed the relationship I've had with them. They're just such good people. And I've been able to meet, some of the other photographers there, but it's the people that, it's a small group that does all the marketing and stuff there. But all the people that I've met there on a personal level, I really have liked being around them. Yeah, getting to play with the latest equipment and stuff like that is nice, but it's the relationships that have really made me enjoy being a photographer associated with them. And I was already a fan of the equipment because I had been using the X100S for several years before they approached me. And I love that camera. I mean, at the time I had a lot of Canon gear. I had some of the Samsung gear, but that X100, man, I was just like, oh, Jesus. It's all I wanted to use, to the point that the Canon gear I just sold because I wasn't using it anymore. And when they approached me about it, I was like, oh yeah, I have no problem talking about how much I like using this thing.
Yeah.
And so I've been around for several iterations of cameras. I did one of the promotions for the XT5. They put me together with a young photographer out in New York, and they flew us out to San Francisco. And basically, I was serving as a mentor to him. And we're still have a good friendship. Hopefully, I'll get to see him in New York when I go there soon. And yeah, it's been that. It's been lovely. And as I've gotten older, the relationships are what matter to me more than anything else. When people want to sit down and talk about equipment and gear, it's like, okay, this has been nice. I'll go. Because I spent a lifetime doing that, I've written about equipment constantly, pretty much all my professional life. So having discussions or getting in debates about equipment, it's just like, I got better things to do, right? But if you want to talk about, the latest photo book that you got that you're excited about, I'll talk to you for hours about that. If you want to talk about sort of the journey in terms of making this your life, okay, yeah, I'm in for that. But if people want to start debating or arguing over something that really doesn't matter, I go, no. I'd rather be going out there and making photographs. Which is why some of the conversations that I have on my show is that I get to have exactly the kinds of conversations I always want to be involved in. It's like, how do you do this? Why do you do this? How do you overcome this challenge in order to make this happen? what sparked the idea to even do this in the first place? How did you overcome this obstacle or that obstacle? How did this work change you as a result? Those are conversations that revolve around life, living life, being present. That's the stuff that's more important, because gear, man, that comes and goes, right? What was the best thing, today is going to be quote unquote obsolete in 2 or 3 years, right? And it's not even obsolete, because there are people out there who are going to pick that thing up and going to make amazing work. While the people who are jumping on the latest gear are too busy trying to figure out how this thing works rather than going out and making photographs, right?
Yeah, and it's so important. So I agree with you so much on all of those points you said. It just, I can't get into gear arguments. I see them constantly, and I have to just I push them to the side, because that's doing nothing to benefit the craft. The craft is us creating the image.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about, the whole red dot saga, right? Like, if you go online, that's all you see is people bash a certain brand, and it's too much. I would prefer this connection like we have currently. We're talking here.
Mm-hmm.
And the way I'm listening to you, you're someone that I've looked up to for many years because of what not only your work, but how you have your podcast, how you do your podcast, which I'm sure some people will see some similarities, because, your work inspired me to know that I was on the right path to create this platform for people to speak and to just have a conversation about what got them into their creative space. And that's what's most important, is building relationships with people, building relationships with brands, and just learning or helping others learn to love the craft itself, the art of making a photograph. So one, I want to thank you for being an inspiration for the Life of Phys podcast. Two, we have a battle of the voices here. I don't know about you, but when people started commenting on my voice on the podcast, it was the weirdest thing to get used to. I'm like, I'm just talking.
Yeah.
So.
No. I feel you there. And I didn't like the way I sounded. I think everybody, when they first start hearing themselves, they don't like the way they sound. And the fact that people like the way that I sound is it's like, okay. And you get used to it. And you have to get used to it, because you got to edit your own show. In the beginning. So you have to get used to the way you sound. It's like you can't avoid it. Right? And
editing is so much work. Getting it to clean it up, especially if you're in a space where you have family and you have dogs and you have neighbors and airplanes that go over and cars that go by, and you try to remove it to give it the cleanest appearance. That's 6 or 7 hours to edit an hour and a half show is something I had to get used to.
Yeah. Luckily, I got someone who's been doing it for me for a while. But yeah, those first years, man, there was a lot of time, especially since I didn't know how to edit. So I just taught myself how to use GarageBand, and I didn't know anything about the plugins and equalizers and compressors and noise reduction. And so you listen to some of those early shows; they're all over the place, because I was experimenting as I was doing. And I would get emails from people, I can't hear this, and I was like, I'm sorry, but eventually I got well enough that I could do it well enough. And then when Martin who was a fan of the show, offered to support the show by editing it, I was so grateful, because that was like 3 or 4 hours on a Sunday that I didn't have to spend doing that, especially if there was some sort of hiccup and it was like, okay, now I got to troubleshoot, and it turns into an all-day thing. It's like, oh God, it was so exhausting. But when it got out, the conversation is always my favorite part of it. The thing I hate the most, and still do, is writing the tracking for the intro and the outro and recording that. God,
we are on the same boat.
It's like pulling teeth, because I have to read it, and it doesn't flow as naturally out of me as it does when I'm just talking, right? But I can't do it because there are all these different points that I have to make in the intro and the outro, and so I have to read it. And so sitting down there and writing it, considering I'm a writer, I think the difficulty is the fact that I know that I have to read it. I think that's what makes it a struggle to get it right, because I don't necessarily write the way I talk. So I'll get it down, and then I start to read it, and I go, I can't. I get into like throwing rocks into my mouth. Certain word combinations just will not work. And so I have to go out back and have to revise it and pace myself so I can breathe and all this stuff. And it's like a performance that I got to do. So I don't necessarily think that I sound completely natural when I'm doing the tracking, which kind of bothers me. Because I know that the way I sound when I'm doing the conversations is very different from the intro and the outro. But it's like I can't think of any other way to do it at this point. I toyed with the AI thing. I tried it a couple of weeks ago. I said, could this be the solution? And then I heard it, and it did sound like me in terms of my voice, but it didn't sound like me. And I just went, nah, I'll pass. I'll just go through the struggle that I go through. It's a small price to pay.
Very much so. I don't know about you, but when I'm recording the intros, I made it just a generic outro so I could just use it on every episode. Just try to speed up my 6 or 7 hours of editing. But every single time I'll do the countdown on the microphone just so I know I'm about to go in. Yeah. And then I'll get halfway through and I'll mess up a word, and then I'll talk to myself. I'll be like, oh, well, look at you. You can't even do this.
Yeah.
You just talked to them for 3 hours, but now you can't even do a 30-second intro.
And all the mouth noises, man. All that stuff. Oh, I have to go in there every time and just go through and I drink as much water as I can beforehand, but it's still there.
Yep.
It's still there. And it's like I just ate a jar full of peanut butter.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. Like I'll sit here and I'll just down glasses of water before I get on. And every time you hear,
yes.
And then you try to capture that one sound, and then you put it on the whole track. You try to drop it from it, and then the whole track drops, and you're like, I don't know what I did now. So that's where I'm at currently.
I have a friend who's a voice actor, and she says green apples. That she'll eat a green apple before. And I guess the acid's in the apple. But the thing is, I always forget. I forget. Oh, I got to get in the habit of just like having a bunch of green apples in the refrigerator. And when I do tracking, eat the green apple. Because I think I've done it once or twice, and I think it's helped. Because the water itself is not doing it.
Yeah.
But I think that she does this for a living. She does a lot of recordings of books. I want to say books on tape, which isn't accurate anymore. Audiobooks.
Yeah.
Audiobooks. So she does that. So I take that as solid advice that I just got to put to practice a little more often.
Well, I think I'm going to try that advice myself.
Yeah, let me know how it goes.
I will. You mentioned photo books. You mentioned you're a big photo book guy.
Oh, yeah.
I just, about a year and a half ago, I started my collection. My wife would say it's out of hand.
Just wait.
My most recent pickup was Phil Penman, New York.
Yeah.
Beautiful book. Oh, wow.
Yeah. Phil's amazing.
I have him on or scheduled for episode June 16th.
Oh, good. Yeah, you'll enjoy conversations with Phil. He's good.
I'm excited. I have my Mount Rushmore of people. You were one of them, by the way, because I've always admired your work. So I was like, when you said yes, I was like, oh, wow. And then another photo book I just got was from James Rice, his new book, Shooting. And it tells his story about why it's called Shooting and about the loss of his mom and everything. And such a powerful, powerful book. His episode is probably the most powerful episode and most in-depth episode I've done so far.
Okay.
And he was right before Jason's, so right before Stock Easy. Which Jason's his story in general is amazing. His rise and how he's done things. Great individual. Now, what are some of your most recent pickups for photo books?
Ooh, man, I have to take a look because I get way too many. I got this wall length bookcase built last year. I had some flood damage in here and I had to get it repaired. I had to take out drywall and stuff like that. And as part of the deal, I said, well, crap, if I'm going to have to spend all this money to restore this place, I'm getting my wall length bookcase.
Yes, sir.
I've been buying way too many books because this wall bookshelf was supposed to last me a while. I filled it already because I've just been buying titles like crazy. And I have to take a look at what I've gotten recently. There was a new book by Harry Gruyer, a Magnum photographer, street photographer.
Yep.
Yeah, I got Winogrand Color, which is a book of Gary Winogrand's color work, came out late last year. Sage Sawyer, Passing Time, which is her recent book. I have still The Art of Noticing by Mary Jo. I can't remember her last name. So I'll just leave it at those three. But there are more. Yeah, because at one point I just had to sort of restrain myself because because I'm always looking for guests for the show, and I would see somebody and I would see the book, and then oh, that looks good, and I hit buy, right? And so just boxes and boxes just kept coming in, and that's like people buy camera equipment or camera bags,
yeah,
all this stuff. It's like books for me. And I don't think I've bought anything new in the last 2 weeks, but that's not because of lack of desire. It's just like I've gotten to the point now that it's like, if I get more books, there are going to have to be some books that I let go because I just don't have the space anymore. And I think I'm kind of reluctant to do that, but there are already 7 books that I want to get and that I am going to get. But I have to pay off a couple of things first. You know,
and they add up quick.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah. I mean, $150. That's kind of the range. And I have a couple that are like retrospectives that cost me $500. You know, it was just like, because I'm of a mind that just because of the nature of some books, if you don't get them when they're new, you're never going to be able to get them.
That happened to me with, I really wanted that Brian Bowen Smith, the drive-by book.
Oh, yeah.
And I missed it, and I found copies, and man, they are a couple $1,000 sometimes. And you're just like, I'm a big fan of Fred Herzog. He's a local legend in Vancouver here. So I looked everywhere for his photographs book. This is the one book that, and it would be like, it'd pop up like $300, $400, $500. And I'm like, I just can't do it right now. And I found one that in a used bookstore in Seattle online, it said used, okay condition, $75. So I jumped at it just to have it to complete my collection. It arrived and looked like it had never been opened. It was mint. And I was like, I got the deal of a century. And I'm super careful with them. And
no, because it's like the best gift a photographer can give themselves. Because I have books that I bought in college, right? And I graduated in 91. And there was a bookstore that I think is still there on Telegraph Avenue in Berkeley called Moe's Bookstore. And I would go down there every week and go to the photo section where a lot of old monographs would come through. And I would buy I would see what came in and grab books, right? And at the time, there wasn't a really huge market for used photo books. It just wasn't. So I could get these things for bargains, right? And books that now on the used market go for a good amount of money. But I would go there, and that was my photo education, because I really didn't take a bunch of photo classes. I didn't get a degree in photography. I would just sit down in my room and I would just go through these books over and over and over and over and over again, looking at Mary Ellen Mark, Elliot Erwitt, Sebastião Salgado, Gordon Parks, Roy DeCarava, Walker Evans. And I would just look at these pictures in these books and trying to sort of understand what made these things good photographs, and trying to bridge the gap between where I was and where they were, right? And it was just trying to understand. I was teaching myself how to see, and I really couldn't sort of verbalize it in any other way, especially at the time, because I didn't understand what I was doing. I just knew that I was drawn to these things. So for me, even now, when I pick up a book, I'm really sort of fascinated by people who are doing things with photography that I think are very personal and distinctive. That it's not just a collection of pretty photographs, right? It's when you take a look at the photographs and you just go, it has to touch me in some way.
Yeah.
And I want to take a look at the photographs and have the world revealed to me in a way that I go, wow, I want to be in awe. That's what it is. I want to open up a book and I want to be in awe. And it has nothing to do with the technique. It's never anything to do with the technique.
I agree so much with you on that. Definitely check out James Rice Shooting.
Okay.
That book, the images and the way he writes in that book it's impactful, and it tells a story. And I did the same thing. I'd get a book when I was learning, and I'd sit in my little sitting area, and I'd just start flipping through it, looking at composition, trying to figure out what they did to get the lighting that way. And I've got no formal training. It was all YouTube. My oldest daughter has her degree in photography. And she's probably the most amazing fashion portrait photographer that hasn't been found yet. That's what I say is she's doing the mother thing. She just had my second grandson a little while ago. And when she's at the start of being able to do the work her way, I think her career is just going to skyrocket. But yeah, looking through books and just trying to figure it out. What made that photo a great photo?
Yeah.
I found Bill Cunningham that way. The legend. And he is, I like to watch, I'll put documentaries on in the morning before work while I'm drinking my coffee.
Mm-hmm.
So my wife and I will just sit on the couch and finish our coffee, and we'll watch them. And she saw Bill Cunningham, and she's like, that man is amazing. He's just so full of life, right?
Yeah.
And then we got the book, and I've got the DVD, and I've got all of his work, but it opened my eyes to a different genre that, for me, it was always landscape. That was my thing. Mm-hmm. But now I want to shoot portraits. I want to shoot people. I want to expand that. I want to be a well-rounded photographer, not just I don't like being stuck in a genre. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, whatever gets you in, that's what, it's fine, but you don't necessarily have to be relegated to that. I think it's finding, this is the way I think about it now. It's like, what excites you about life, period. And whatever that is, make photographs of that, and it can be nature and wildlife, but it can also be what's happening in your own family. It could be the other, because everyone has interest. It's not one single thing, right? If you could wildlife, but you also love food, make pictures of food.
Yep.
Something that allows you to shoot on sort of a regular basis, rather than, I can only practice photography whenever I go out on vacation or go on an outing. Man, that's a long time to wait to make those kinds of photographs.
Yep.
It's like, what can you photograph on a regular basis? that you really feel passionate about and practice with that. Because, if you practice making photographs around your house and you know how to make good photographs around your house, that's going to help you when you go out to Yosemite or you go out to Paris or you go out wherever you're going to go out to, because you're training yourself how to see. And that's basically all that it is. It's learning how to see and respond to the world around you and translate that into an interesting photograph. So, yeah, I'm one of those crazy guys that carries a camera with him every day, right? I don't care what I shoot.
Guilty as charged.
Yeah, I don't care what I shoot, man. It's just that I'm shooting. And the last 2 weeks, I haven't shot anything really. And that's just because of life. There's just been a lot of stuff going on. And it's been difficult for me to focus. Yeah, because there's just a lot of stuff that's happening. And I can feel it, but I don't beat myself up for it either. Because that's one of the things I've learned. There are going to be periods where I'm going to have a dry spell, where I'm not making photographs. Because I haven't updated my Instagram, I think, in 2 weeks. And I'm usually putting at least something out a week. And I'm like, well, it's just, there's nothing from me right now. But I know it's gonna turn around at some point. And so that's been one of the things that's been helpful for me, is to recognize that there are going to be periods where I'm not going to be as creative or as productive as I want to be. And that's okay. Because that's part of the process too. Right? And rather than belittling myself or punishing myself or just saying a whole bunch of bad things about myself, it's going, oh, it's one of those times. And I just kind of roll with it. And I still have my camera with me. And I know that at some point it's going to click again and I'll start making pictures again. And that dry spell is going to feed what's going to happen subsequently. And that was a lesson long learned. Right. It took me a while to get that, because when I would struggle in that way, I would get so angry at myself. Right. Especially when I'm seeing all these other people going out there and they're making work and they're doing all these amazing things and I'm not doing squat. And it's just like, oh no, it's okay. Everybody goes through this. Everybody. There's nobody who, there are probably a couple of freaks out there, who constantly put stuff out 24/7 and never stop. But most human beings, they're going to have these periods of sort of ups and downs. And I think it's unrealistic to think that you are kind of the exception to that. Or that I'm doing something wrong. Right? I do a lot of journaling every day. Spend 15, 20 minutes writing. And that helps me to kind of process all the noise that's in my head. And that's really invaluable. I used to do it off and on, but I think for the last 2 or 3 weeks, I've been doing it every day. And it's been incredibly helpful. And I feel that, in a way, it's allowing me to be creative in a different way, so that I don't feel that I'm completely uncreative. So, I sit down there with my daughter before I got on the call with you. I was just sitting there writing. And when I'm done with you, I'm going to go finish it before I get started with the rest of my day. But it really helps me to just kind of go, okay, this is what's going on with me right now. And I know I'm going to be teaching a photo workshop next weekend in Los Angeles. So I know probably then I'll get the wheels greased again. I usually don't make a great photograph during a workshop just because I'm in teaching mode. But I'll be out there making photographs. So it'll feel good, but
it'll get that spark moving.
Right. Yeah. And, and seeing other people make great photographs that are in my workshop, that's always inspiring. When I see them produce something, I go, wow, that was great. And that's always a good jump start.
Yeah. And that was a great explanation. And that's such an important aspect of that connection between being okay that your creativity isn't firing 24/7. There's so many people that are so worried that, oh, I had this great run and then it stopped and now I'm done. They think that's the end all of their photographic journey. not just that it's a speed bump in the journey of where they're headed. So mental health connection to your creativity, I mean, that's such a big factor.
Yeah, because you have to practice a lot of grace with yourself when it comes to being creative. Because it's just an extension of who I am. That's it. There's no other way of sort of thinking about it. And I'm not Mr. Positivity all the time. I deal with depression. I deal with anxiety. I live with ADHD. And so it can make the day-to-day a struggle. But that's part of what shapes me into who I am. And as a result, also informs how I make photographs and how I write. And I used to think, if I wasn't this way, if I wasn't that way, if I was more like that person, if I was more quote unquote normal. And the reality is I am who I am and I can't change any of that. And
I suffer from the same things. So it's tough when I can't hear myself. So I find a lot of the people I've discussed and had these conversations with over the last few months, a lot of us have those same things. We battle depression and anxiety. A lot of us have ADHD. And it's just, those are the things we battle. And that camera is such an important aspect to help level that stuff. That shutter click, whether it's, shooting a flower or a garbage can or an alleyway or a beautiful mountain, or last night shooting the northern lights that were above us. There's always something that helps keep me level or grounded to who I am, to my creative, my creative platform, and trying to not be stuck or worried about a plateau that I hit where I feel leveled. Mm-hmm. I'm not learning, I'm not growing. I'm just sitting there on that path. And I know, like yourself, I'll take a photo of something and all of a sudden everything will click again, and I'll go out and shoot hundreds of photos and I'll be good. And then I'll have another flatline area where then I worry about it and take a photo and away I go again.
Yeah. Yeah, because it's about being present. When I'm looking through the camera's viewfinder, I'm not thinking about what happened an hour before, and I'm not catastrophizing about something that might happen tomorrow. Zen, meditative thing to do. It's a meditative practice for me, right? Because in order to effectively make a photograph, I have to be completely in the moment. And I think that is what, it's so therapeutic for me when I'm out there making photographs. Because the goal isn't so much to make a great photograph for me. It's for me to be present enough that I can discover something that otherwise I would overlook. Right. And because I'm doing a lot of stuff on the street, it could be anything. Right. And I'm just looking for these different elements that normally don't have any connection to each other, but then within the context of the frame, they do. And when I find those things, it's like, oh, and there's this rush, right? It's like a kid, going into a toy store for the first time, right? And you see that thing, whatever that thing is. And you go, oh my God, there it is. Something that you've seen in a commercial as a kid, over and over again. And then there it is right there in front of you. And it's like, and that's what it feels like to me when I make that discovery. It's like, there it is. And there's this sense of awe and joy that comes with it, with that moment of discovery. And it's so therapeutic. And then the challenge is, can I translate that into an effective photograph? And sometimes I can, sometimes I can't. But that moment of discovery is what it seduces me to go out there, because that's the experience. The moment of discovery for me is what's most important above all else. And if I can make a good photograph of it, I'm happy. If I don't make a good photograph of it, I can learn from it, because I'll look at it and go, why didn't it work? Oh, it didn't work because I didn't look too carefully at the edges of the frame, or I included this element in here in the lower right-hand corner. And I know that inevitably I'm going to encounter a situation with similar ingredients to it, right? Because everything repeats itself. And the next time I encounter a scene that's kind of like that, I'll know from the images that didn't work what I can do this time to make it work. So it's never, yes, it's disappointing, but it's not frustrating the way it was when I was first starting. Where, to, like you, when you're talking about the water flow, those pictures weren't turning out. It's like, yeah, all those pictures that led up to that moment where you had that one shot, all those images that didn't work are absolutely necessary, right? They may not have been the shot that you eventually came to, but if you hadn't made all those shots that didn't work, you never would have gotten to the point where you could do it now and do it with any consistency. So it's like you don't look at your work when you're learning, and you're always learning, as trash, as garbage. You know, I say they're bad. When I tell people that my hard drives are full of bad photographs, I don't even think that bad is the right word for it. It's images that don't work. They're not bad. They just don't work. But they're all important.
There's all a learning step in that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because I
have a question for you. So I'm still a relatively new photographer at six and a bit years of doing it. Do you ever have those moments where you take a photo and you have that instant excitement and the thought process is, I just nailed that and that photo's going to be the best, and you're like, yes.
Oh yeah, that happens not very often. They happen every once in a great while.
Yeah.
And one of those moments was actually caught on video. Olaf, he's a photographer out of Vancouver, and we met up in Paris. And we had breakfast with each other. And his wife was filming him because he used to do these YouTube videos. And so we went out and she was filming the both of us. And I was on the street and there was this sort of complex arrangement that I had made. And with this narrow street, and there was some street elements, sort of like barriers and a wall in the distance, just a bunch of different stuff. And in this shot, there's this guy that's coming, and as he passes my camera, he raises his hand up to his head or to his hair. And I think I framed the shot through his arm, right? But I saw him coming, and I knew I was going to include him in the foreground, but for whatever reason, he raised his arm up and basically created a subframe, a frame within the frame. And I saw him coming up, and I hit the button, and I knew I'd had it. I knew I had timed it right, and I hadn't even looked at the image. And then I usually don't chimp, but I looked at the screen and went, yes! And his wife got that on video. And I think he posted the image in the video. I'll have to take a look for it, and I'll send it to you. But that was one of those moments where someone actually got me in that moment, because things like that are it's small stuff, and it's stuff you can't really sort of anticipate. I couldn't anticipate that he was going to move his hand in that way. I just knew that when he came within the frame, I was going to press the button. That was just like a gift. And I knew it made the shot. And, but that's not often. You know, you kind of discover stuff after the fact, because so much of my concentration is just staying in the moment. That's all I'm trying to do. Just stay in the moment, and you sort of anticipating, and then you're pressing the button, and then I keep shooting. I don't like make the shot and then look at the camera, because something better could happen in the next instant. So I'm like waiting for the scene to sort of play itself out before I say, okay, I'm done. Now I can move on. So it's like, yeah, I may have gotten something, but I don't allow that to keep me from continuing to see, because things are constantly changing, evolving, And there's a certain lifespan to a moment, right? And there's never one single moment within that time frame. And it could be 10 seconds. It could be 5 minutes, right? So my job is to just be present. Just stay here. You know that the bones are right. All the pieces are there. And you're usually waiting for something else to give you that kind of flourish to make it something else. And so it's just like, okay, just be here. Just be here. Just be here. Just be here. You know? And sometimes it's going, oh, it's not going to work. It's like, just be here. Shut up. Just be here. Right? Because that's the exercise. That's the practice. It's just be right now. Be here. Don't worry about whether the photograph turns out. Just be here. And that's a good day for me, is when I've honored the moment. I may not come away that day with any exceptional photograph. I'll come out with some good photographs, some okay photographs. Is it going to be anything exceptional that happens that day? Who knows, right? But if I felt like, yeah, for the 2 or 3 hours I was out there, I was there. I was present. That, for me, is the measure of a good day of photography. You know, because
exactly.
because then those 2 or 3 hours, I took care of myself. You know, and that's my therapy.
I could go out and capture nothing. I'm going through the motions of capturing a sliver of time. But to me, that is the most therapeutic way that I can help myself. And if I am willing to help myself, that allows me to be a better partner, a better father, just a better person. And that's the exact same words I said. I said, photography is my therapy. And that's something that it just resonates with me. And it's a close second, followed by talking to people on the podcast. Yeah. I find that hearing their story and sharing similar situations it's really improved my day to day. Like, I look forward to every conversation now. You know, oh, well, what am I going to learn from people today? Or what are we going to take away from the experience?
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, when you're making photographs, you're a witness for your own life. You know, that's what it is. You know, it's like we're here for only a short period of time. God knows how long we have. And with the camera, we get to bear witness to what our unique experience was. There's never going to be anyone like us ever again. And it's not about, you know, this work making us famous or making us money or living on. It's just like, for that moment, you're saying, this is what I'm experiencing in this amazing world that we live in. And here's the little proof of what I found amazing and beautiful that I wanted to honor in that photograph. And if other people can take pleasure in it, it's all the better, right? You get to share this thing with someone else. But I think that it's incredibly self-affirming when you get to the place where the photography is a means by which you take pleasure of just your life and just existing, free of judgment, free of criticism, free of comparison, of concerns about good or bad or whether anybody was going to like it or everybody's going to buy it. No, it's none of that. It's like, God, I took advantage of being alive for the moment, which I think is a hard thing to do with all the noise that's out there, with people sort of permanently tethered to their phones. I went to a comedy concert and I was amazed by how many people. There was one woman, I think, until she was told to put her phone down, she was recording the entire concert on her phone. And she was just looking at it, I think, for about 20 minutes through her phone. And I'm like going, you're at the concert. It's being recorded. If you want to watch it again, you can go on Netflix and see it. You know, you're missing out because you're looking at this screen and you're not even looking at him on the stage other than to follow him. And I was like, wow, that was sad to me. Yeah. Right? Because she was missing out on the experience all because she She was recording something that she was completely missing. She wasn't present at all, right? She was just thinking about looking at this thing later, and she'll probably never look at it again, to be quite
But
honest.
she missed the moment. She
She
was there. That's I speak to. We have a fine arts school here in the town I live in, and I go in and I talk to the grade 9, 10 photo majors, which was such an honor to be welcomed in. The teacher reached out to me and asked if I'd do it, and I did. And one of my first questions is always, like, to me, I look at my photography as an artist. I'm an artist. I'm creating a moment.
Mm-hmm.
So I always ask, are you like, do you truly want to be an artist, or are you looking to become an influencer? Because that's such a thing now in today's day. I was pleasantly surprised to hear most of them wanted to create art, which was nice. But by saying that, I always try to figure out a way to explain that the likes and the follows and all of that stuff really doesn't matter to your work. Your work is what you self-inspire. So if you're super happy with it, don't worry about getting 1 like, getting 20 likes, getting 10,000 likes. Just be proud of the work you put out. And I don't have a way to really connect with them on that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I want them to understand that those likes and follows, while they feel good for that second, that image that you captured, that could last a lifetime. That could go through so many people's eyes and create so much and tell so many stories. You know, and that it just was it's an honor to be around the kids and be able to explain to them what I've had a quick uprise of pitfalls that have been thrown at me and things I didn't know how to handle because my own mental health was bad.
Mm-hmm.
And just being able to help them avoid some of that stuff was such an honor.
Yeah, or just learn how to that it's okay to go through those moments and to go through those difficult, painful times. You know, going through the loss of my dog a couple of weeks ago. Fuck, man, I'm still sort of processing that.
It's crazy.
I know that when I was laying there on the floor with her in her last moments, man, I was so present. I was so present. I was lying there on the floor with her. My face is to her. I can feel her breath on my face. You know, she was covered in a SpongeBob SquarePants beach towel. You know, and I'm just looking at her. She doesn't know what's going on. You know, but man, I was there. I was there, and I was sad, and I was upset, but I was there because it was important for me to be there. And I wasn't trying to numb out my feelings. I wasn't looking to be distracted. And the absence afterwards is always what kicks my ass. You know, my wife immediately had me remove her bedding from the side of the bed, my side of the bed. And so every morning when I would step out on her bedding. And that first morning, my feet hit the hardwood floor. And it was like, fuck.
Yeah.
And that things like that really just like made it sort of real, you know, that she was gone. And, but I'm not stuffing it down, which is what I would have done in the past. Because my go-to was food. I don't drink. I don't drug, you know, but I would numb myself with food. And thank God I don't do that as much anymore. So sometimes I'll get a bowl of chips and some dip, you know, and I'll go to it. But, it's been really important for me to be able to feel my feelings and go, whether I'm angry, whether I'm sad, whether I'm grieving, and go, this isn't permanent. especially when I go through bouts of depression, because I was only diagnosed with major depressive disorder and ADHD about, I want to say 5 or 6 years ago. So I'd been living with this all my life and just felt like I was faulty, that I was defective. And because early on in my life, I knew something was wrong with me, but I couldn't verbalize it, and I didn't feel I could trust anyone to tell them that something was wrong.
But we couldn't back then. That's the thing.
No.
Growing up, I was always told by my father, I'm not sure how old you are, but I'm turning 50 this year.
Mm-hmm.
And I was always told, like, suck it up, push it down. Men don't cry. Don't have emotion. Just, you're tough, you're strong. And I lived with that awful advice until my late 30s. And then one day I just clicked, and I was like, I want to try to be a voice of change. And to be a voice of change, I need to be okay myself. One, sharing my traumas and letting others know that it's okay to cry. Let others know it's okay to talk about it. It's okay to not be okay. And one, the fact that people look at me weird because I carry a camera with me everywhere I go, like it's a security blanket. But for me, that little box that captures those images and captures that light, that is my therapy. That click of the shutter, it's not even the image, it's the click of the shutter and what it takes for me to capture or see that composition that I'm looking at. That's what helps me. The image, that's the reward.
That's the reward. Absolutely. Yeah. And the more that I've come to understand that the more accepting of myself whenever or however I am, if I'm in the deep depression or anxiety or frustration, the acceptance of that means that if I embrace that the moments that present themselves to me as a photographer, I can be ready for it. Because if I can be present during those difficult times and open to it, that means I won't be blind to some of the mundane, ordinary things that happen around me, because my mind isn't distracted with all those things that I'm trying to repress. Yeah. Right? If I'm out there with the intent of making, a great photograph, and I'm dealing with stuff or not dealing with stuff, right? And just trying to put it down and just looking for a distraction, I'm not going to see anything, right? I'm going to be the hamster running on that wheel in my head. I'm going to be walking in the streets and I'm going to have a camera with me, but there's going to be a bunch of stuff I'm going to miss, because I'm wrestling with myself inside of my head with each step that I take down the street. And there's going to be wonderful stuff happening around me, but I'm not going to see it. And then I'm going to be all the more frustrated when I get home because I feel like I didn't do anything. I didn't get anything.
Yeah. And it's so important to just, I like that word, to be present. It's so important to try to realize that for myself, and I heard you say it earlier, is when I'm out to take photos, I don't worry about what was bothering me beforehand. I don't worry that, mortgage is due in 3 days. My brain allows me to turn everything else off around me and focus on what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I didn't have that for a long time. My creative outlet growing up was always skateboarding until my early 30s. I skateboarded all the time. That was my thing. 9 broken ankles. The 9th one put me out completely. But I had this big space in my life where I didn't have an outlet of creativity. There was nothing. I was a dad. I was a husband. I went to work, but I had no way to take care of me and what I needed. So finding the camera again, I got that spark, that creative energy that I used to capture by being on a skateboard. It was there and I felt it and I was like, okay, this is something. And then again, that progression of constantly hundreds and hundreds of really, really bad photos all led to that one that's actually in my living room on the wall, because I was like my very first real photo that I did what I wanted to. but I didn't quit. A lot of people will have that frustration. They just give up. They just put it aside. They're like, well, it's not for me, obviously. And I accredit that to being a skateboarder, because it's constant repetition of learning and learning and learning and crashing and hurting yourself and learning to get back up and do it again. And I've tried to put that into this, whether it's photography or whether it's letting people come on and share their story and being open with enough to let people know, like, I'm a big dude. I'm one of those guys people look at and they're like, oh, don't mess with him. I'm a teddy bear, man. Like, I'll watch movies and I'm like sitting with my family and I'm like, doing all that, trying to not, but now I just let it go. And letting it go lets my three boys know, like, well, look at Dad. Like, Dad's not afraid. Dad's not afraid to just be himself, like letting his emotion out. Because if we hold on to emotion and stuff things down, there's going to be a time in our lives where that explodes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's not a pretty time.
So many good points you made on that last one. Yeah. Because me and my wife would have arguments. It'd be the explosive arguments. And it was exactly what you said. Usually I would explode, not because of what was happening in that moment. It was all the stuff before that left was unaddressed, that was unsaid. And it was completely inappropriate for what was going on in the moment. And it was because all this stuff was stuffed out, Yeah. And I didn't grow up talking about my feelings. We did not sit around a dinner table talking about our day, right? And so even now, I am not real generous with my feelings with my wife or a lot of people, right? There are a couple of people that I will share how I'm feeling, but not, God. How do I say this? When I do talk to people about my feelings, I'm like processing what I'm feeling. I don't necessarily share the feeling with somebody else. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right? So, because for me, that's not something I feel comfortable doing. There's some moments where it's just like, the wall breaks. Right. And, like you, man, I will tear up watching a movie, and I have no shame about it. But if I'm struggling with something, I will talk with my friends about it, talk a little bit about my wife, but I'm not necessarily sharing my feelings. It's more like, I'm struggling with this. This is what's going on with me. This is why I'm being a little, not standoffish, but I'm being a little more restrained. Right? And it's not like, especially with my wife, I have to explain, it's not anything that you did. I'm not mad at you. It's just like, I'm just like working this thing out. And I'm not looking for a solution. So I'm just writing the feeling. And for me, the feelings come out in the journal. I'll get it out that way. And if I'm really in the deep of it, there are a couple of guys that I can talk to and say, man, I am just like, I have fucked up right now. Yeah. And get it out. But that doesn't come easy to me. I've gotten better about it because I know the most important thing I've learned is that I'm not alone in this.
That's such a big thing
to learn. For the longest time, I felt completely isolated by my own choosing, because I felt like no one would understand and people would only be in judgment of me. And when I realized that I wasn't the only one going through it, and I started sharing with other people who are close to me, and they started sharing with me, it was like, oh, it's okay. This is normal. I'm not some freak. I'm not defective. I'm not faulty. And that was incredibly helpful to me. And it's been really freeing. And right now, along with, my passing of my dog, we're dealing with a couple of family stuff, which just brings the anxiety level and the tension is really sort of high. And it's like, my goal every day is to stay present and to find something that I'm grateful for. Every single day, it's like, okay, before I go to bed, there's got to be something I'm can be really grateful for, and it can be probably it's going to be this conversation, that I'm having with you. That was like, I'm really enjoying this, and it's like, okay, when I go to bed tonight, what was a good thing that happened today? Doesn't matter if it was, a whole crap show for the rest of the day. It's like there's something that about this day that was good, that I can take pleasure in and be grateful for, because I'm not going to get this day back. I don't get any redos, right? So it's like, it's important for me to be to appreciate and be grateful for something today, rather than just kind of ruminating all the things that were wrong with it. There's no point in that. I only get to live this life once. I get May 11th, 2024. I get it once.
Yep.
That's it. So,
I'm very grateful for your time today, and I'm grateful for this conversation. And it just reaffirms to me, let me know that I'm not alone.
no.
Right? And that's something that I'm learning as well as you were. I feel like we're probably at the same point of learning on our journey. We're both kind of learning. We both have the similar thing. I'm learning to communicate. Not like, hey, I'm okay, I'm a warrior, just stack it on, we're good, let's go.
Yeah.
When in reality, yes, you can stack it on, I'm going to carry the load, but I'm going to be later today or tonight, I'm going to be a mess, because I was trying to figure myself out before that load got added, and now I'm trying to figure the load out and my stuff, so I doubled it up. And these conversations help me immensely, because, like I said, I'm not alone. I know that there's hundreds and thousands of us out there that all feel the same way.
Yeah.
For me, it's a big part of me with everything is I'm very hypercritical of myself, and I'm very, very, and it's detrimental. It is not like, I'll take it, not even an image, and that's just, we didn't do our best, and then I'm hypercritical at everything else. It extends to everything that I do. And learning to give that part of me away, and just, it's okay. This is okay.
Yeah.
Everything else is amazing, and you're worried about one little thing. It has been, it's a lesson for sure, because there's days where it doesn't work, but I've also learned to talk. I have a friend who I can call anytime.
Yeah.
I've got a couple friends I've met actually from doing the podcast that we now have become. We have our text group, and we're like, man, today I'm having a rough day, and then everybody's like, oh, what's going on? And we kind of, and it's allows men to just be open and be okay with having feelings. And it's been such a change. It's been such a change for me.
Especially for us guys, man, especially of a certain generation. I'm about 10 years older than you, but the same sort of growing up from, with fathers that weren't necessarily expressive. Then it wasn't that they didn't love us, but that's the way they came up, right? And they were trying to do their best in terms of teaching their sons how to negotiate life. And that's the way it was for them. But, because our dads didn't teach us that way, we have to learn it elsewhere. But it's a big hump, right?
It is. Because
it's like, feelings are part of being human, and learning how to process that stuff in a healthy way that allows us to be there for our spouses, our kids, our relatives, our friends, our coworkers. It takes you have to be really purposeful about it. And it's not for the faint of heart. That's why most people end up, finding some sort of distraction, alcohol, drugs, sex, YouTube, something to sort of like tamp down the feelings. And, but I'm discovering that, man, I get to enjoy my life by being brave enough to do it. Cause I get not to miss out. And I don't know how many years I have left in me, but I want to feel like I'm making the most out of it. Just because I didn't know any better, I missed out on a lot of good things that I could have appreciated, that were happening to me, but that I didn't appreciate because I was too busy with the noise in my head. And thank God, I'm not there anymore. And that today, I know I'm going to find something good that happens today. Even if something catastrophic happens at the end of the day, it's like, my goal is like, I'm working on having a good day and being appreciative for it. And if something bad doesn't happen, I know I have friends, tools, skills to be able to get through it. Because I have friends who have gone through worse stuff than I've gone through. I have friends who have lost children,
Greatest fear of my life.
Stuff that you just can't imagine happening. They've gone through it, and I've seen them walk through it with dignity and generosity and love and compassion. And I go, man, they can do it. I can walk through whatever I'm going through as well. And I can lean on these guys. And the beautiful thing of having friends like that is that I don't have to explain myself, and I don't have to justify myself. I can just say, I'm in a bad place. And they listen. And that's all we can be for each other. Really. That's been one of the things that has taught me, how can I be a good man to the people in my life? And the answer to that, just listen. I don't have to fix it. I don't have to offer them any goddamn advice. I don't have to pick up the burden for them. All I have to do is listen and say, I'm here. That's it. And that can be goddamn uncomfortable, because as uncomfortable as I am my own feelings, I'm not very comfortable with someone who's really in a really emotional state. But it's like, that's my job right now, is to put aside my own discomfort and be there for them, because that's what they were there for me. When my dad died, I was on my phone with my friend Bob, and I was just blubbering. Just crying over the phone. That dry heave, snot coming out her nose kind of crying. And all that was important to me is that there was somebody at the other end of the phone. That was it. So.
Well, just so you know, I'm always at the other end of the phone for you. If you ever need anything.
Same here, man.
I had the same thing. My dad and I, we didn't talk for 10 years. We reconnected December of 1998, and he passed away May 8th of 99. So I didn't because I couldn't forgive him for 10 years because nobody understood what PTSD was. He went through some stuff, and I understand now why my childhood was the way it was, because I understand what PTSD is, and I understand the pressures and stresses. There's nothing like. I look at my dad as he was my hero. He was the guy nothing could break that man. If anything ever happened, I knew he'd have my back, right? And then to see him later in his life, waking up from sleep, crying, he didn't mean to, like he was only doing what he was instructed to do, like having these terrors of a man who served his country proudly, right? Who's just, to me, could never be broken. I started to learn and understand his cycles of what he went through as a kid growing up with an alcoholic father, to the time he got in the military, to the tours he did. And while I can't forgive him for a lot of the stuff he did to me and has caused me trauma, but what I can do is just understand and respect him enough to know that maybe if those situations were different, I wouldn't have done or wouldn't have gone through what I went through. Mm-hmm. Right? I don't know if I explained that quite right, because in a way, I have forgiven him 100%. And by me admitting that I'm doing that and talking to people and expressing my emotion and my feelings and putting it out. I mean, this isn't just you and I talking. This goes out publicly. This goes out to people. And if we can help one person, my friend, if we can help one person understand that it's okay to talk, we did our job. We shared from the heart, and those people hear this. And then maybe they go and talk to their wife or their best friend. They're like, I'm not doing good right now. That is the best feeling in the world.
Yeah.
I don't do this for praise. I don't do this for views. I don't do this to have sponsors coming on board. Those are amazing benefits of doing a platform like this. In reality, if I only had one view per show or one view in total, and that one view helped change someone's outlook on the way they live their life, I was successful.
Yeah. That's this is a gift to yourself by choosing to do this, right? And the reasons why you're doing it, because you're taking care of yourself in a way by having these conversations that you wouldn't have otherwise, right? It gives you an excuse to talk about it. And as you said, someone's going to hear this or any of the other episodes that you do, and it's going to help them. And like me, I've been told periodically that the show that I've done has changed people's lives. I'm not thinking about that when I'm doing these shows. I'm struggling with my tracking, right? But I've heard enough to know that, that some people have been helped and guided as a result of me doing this show for as long as I have. And
the Candid Frame is such an important podcast. I'm just saying that now, so if people are listening and they haven't heard your podcast, it's one of my go-tos. So it's one of, anytime there's a new episode, I get giddy because the way you do it, it's not that typical interview type. It's not talking about that in-depth gear questions. I always ask you one gear question in an episode just to find out what you're shooting with currently, and that's where I stop it. But I can see that there's something about the way that when you do your podcast, it comes through in the way you speak. It comes through in the tone you carry. It comes with the way you connect with the guest. And it's funny. It's funny to me because when I started this, there's two podcasts that I listened to religiously, yours and The Visual Revolutionary. I love the way The Visual Revolutionary just free flows it because that's how I like to do it. But it's more of like boom, boom, project, boom, boom, boom. He's a great guy, but he's great. I've talked to him a few times. And then yours is flows very smooth. There's a lot of great back and forth. It's like a conversation. So I kind of tried to merge the two processes. Yeah. The conversation with having that fun, free flow attitude. And so, yes, your podcast has been a big inspiration to me.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
So now to have considered you a friend and you're sitting across from me and someone that I would love to grab a coffee with and just shoot the shit. It's kind of surreal for me in this moment because you have a lot of experience. You have a lot of knowledge that you've shared on your podcast. And I just hope you continue to just keep expanding and pushing that platform because so many people need to hear the messages you share.
No, thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I don't imagine that I'll stop doing it ever. As long as I can talk, work a mic. I do it because it's sometimes it's like the highlight of my week to sit down and talk with another human being, talking about something that we both love, but having to have a genuine, sincere conversation as if there's nobody else there but me and them. And I get to know them and they get to know me. And I want more of that. If this was, I've said it many a time, if this was the only thing that I did, I would be so happy. I would love to get, to be at a point where I was releasing 2 episodes a week just because I want to talk to that many people.
That's a lot of work, man.
Oh yeah. But if it's the only thing that I'm doing, it's like, let's go to it. I got 2 this week, and it's like sitting down there researching and getting there and having the conversations. Because every time I fire up the mic and I hit record, I'm like, it's such a joy for me. It's just as joyful as when I go out and make the photographs.
This is the first week in 2 months that I'm not doing 2. Like, I'm not releasing 2. So I'm not releasing this Sunday. I'm going back to once a week, trying to capture some of my life back.
Oh yeah. Because I was releasing 1 a week, and now it's like every 2 week-ish. It's been staggered. Just because there's so much going on in my life, but I try to get it out every 2 to 3 weeks. But I did it every other week on the advice of a friend of mine, because it was a real challenge, especially since I started working at the museum, where I have a 9 to 5. Where before, when I was working at home, my schedule was completely my own. I could do interviews at any time. And now things are getting a little tighter, and I was getting really stressed. And I was like, oh, yeah. Because right now I have enough interviews that I've done to get me through the summer, if not a little, even into early fall, right? So I'm not scheduling any more interviews probably until July or August. And there are a bunch of people I want to interview right now, right? But I'm like, hold on. You're not going to be able to release it for 4 months. Wait. Right, and just put their names down on the list. Either get their publisher to send me a review copy or buy the damn book. Right, and just get ready for it. But what you're doing is like, if it's anything like my experience, you're going to touch people who you'll never hear from. You'll never hear from them at all. But though I've heard something on one of your episodes, or several of your episodes, that are going to shift their perspective or maybe even transform their life. And the reasons why you should continue to do it when you come to those moments of giving up, because it will happen, where life is going to get the better of you and you're going to say, oh, screw this, I'm not going to do this anymore, and it's not worth the time. You're going to push through it because of the reasons you gave for doing it in the first place. Because it nurtures you, it helps you, and as an ancillary effect, it's going to help somebody else. And as transformative an experience as it is for you, that's what it can be for somebody else. And I have no perspective on what my show is or can be for someone at this point, right? It's just like, this is the show I have to put out. This is the work that I need to do. And once it's out, it's out. But I'm reminded periodically of how important it has been to other people. And it's like, okay, that's my responsibility. As inconvenient or as frustrating as the process can be, it's like, it's given me so much. So this is my price of admission, is to continue doing it and not letting frustration or inconvenience be the excuse to stop doing it.
I don't know about you. I got my first email like a month ago. Like, this is only where we're going into May. So February 15th, I released my first episode. And I'm at 22 now, which is mind blowing. But I got an email the other day, and the guy's like, hey, I just want to let you know that I randomly came across your podcast, and I love what you're doing. And he's what he said, you're not only are you putting out content that's important and letting people know it's okay to talk about their mental health and where they are and their emotions, but you're going to save people's lives. And when I first read that was really hard to try to fathom what he was talking about. And then as I've gone on, I've got more and more of the same type of email. In fact, I've got one of the email people coming on as a guest, because he talked about in his email about how photography was and is based, saved his life. Mm-hmm. And Phys, so the Life of Phys stands for Photography Heals Your Soul. And that's the basis of me. Is I did photography because that's what helped me. But we've recently, we're branching out. So there's going to be, I've got NFL players lined up. I've got NBA players, Olympians, professional skateboarders, snowboarders, surfers. So we're going to expand because they're all being creative.
Yeah,
they all
absolutely.
have struggles and stresses. And my actual main goal is I'm always going to talk to photographers because they're just like me. That's my thing. But I want the world to know, like, these guys who are considered the elites suffer from the same strains, struggles, and stresses that we have as, quote unquote, the average Joe.
Yeah. When you were talking about skateboarding earlier, I finally understood it as therapy, because I think, my God, what better form of self-therapy than skateboarding, where you go out there and you're pushing your limits, you're constantly making mistakes and having to recover from them and not linger on them and go on and try again. Over and over and over again. And I went, when you said that, it was like, oh my God, now I understand it. And I understand why so many young men and women who are into skateboarding, who come from like households like ours, why it's such a life-saving thing. That it's not just kids having fun. It's a life preserver, right? Because they're doing this thing, they're testing their limits, they're seeing what they're capable of, and they're doing it in a community of people that are supportive. That whether they're new to it or they've been doing it, they're all about saying, you can do it. You can do it. You can do it. Oh my God. And if you're not getting that, anywhere else in your life, that's why people jack into that. And it's like, oh my. So there's a couple of skateboard photographers that I want to interview, including Ray Barbie.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
I had pro skateboarder Steve Caballero on. A legendary Bones Brigade member since 1982, or 79 or 82. And his story, the way he spoke, I've always, like, when I look at my street stuff, it's always super low and it's weird angles of things. But that, to me, is my skateboard mindset that's still in my brain, because I'll look at it like I'm skateboarding. And that's how I capture the moment of that street scene, is how I would have seen it on my skateboard.
Yeah.
And you'll see a lot of skateboard photographers that are very much the same thing. They're like, oh, wow, okay, I shoot just like I skateboard. Because there's such a connection. Another good one that would be great to have on, his name is Arto Sari. He's from, he lives in Hawaii now. I believe he was originally from Finland.
Okay.
But his photography is amazing. Atiba Jefferson is another photographer that would be outstanding. And then J. Grant Britton. He's the OG. He's the legend when skateboard photography.
What's his name again?
Grant Britton.
Grant Britton. Okay.
And then if you ever need a guest, there's this guy. His name's Tyson. He runs the Life of Phys. He'd be more than honored to be on your podcast.
Okay, cool. You're doing God's work here, man. You know,
I appreciate you.
And you're early in on it, but you are so well ahead of so many people who start a podcast and peter out. Because I think it's something like, I forget what the number is. I think it's like 7 episodes where people are usually out.
Yeah.
Because they realize how much work it's in. So you're well past the curve by having done as many as you have. But, if you ever need, talking off the ledge, if you ever consider stopping doing this, because you'll find that the more you do it over time, and as you incorporate this more as sort of a part of your life, especially all your mental health life, it becomes more and more sustainable. Because the the things that make it a struggle and difficult early on, the first couple of years, become experience. And then you learn how to, it's just like photography. You learn how to keep it simple at some point.
Yeah.
You don't carry two cameras, lens, all this stuff that just ends up being a burden. You just keep it simple. Like the issue you had with the recording thing, stuff like that's going to happen, but you learn how to roll with it.
Yeah,
and
throw the AirPods in and away we go. Yeah. So, I mean, I've got my first shipment coming from Fujifilm Canada, which I think is super cool that they put me on there. I can just request whatever I want to try and they'll send it to me, which I thought was super neat. I've got Hobolight it started out as like a 6-month contract. We're going to do 6 months. They were going to be the partner of the podcast. That actually got scrapped last month and it became a lifetime partnership.
Great.
Yeah. Kieran Carnani is super supportive of what I'm doing and she sees the end goal and the vision. And that's something that I try to let people know. Well, I'm fresh. Like I was 2 episodes in when I talked to her about coming on board as helping me light the studio. And I was able to achieve like so much because of the support of those people. So there's so much that can happen in such a short amount of time if you're willing to put the work in.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I have enough episodes like you. I have enough episodes to get to the end of June-ish. But now going once a week, I should be able to stretch. Luckily, I have some friends who just kind of did filler episodes for me because I wasn't sure what was going to happen. So I should be able to stretch until mid-August if I need to, because I would like to take time off from recording in July and August and be present and be part of my family, but have episodes scheduled to come up and go out. So, but yeah, you know what? I just want to, again, thank you for gracing me with your time, your wisdom, and I'm grateful to call you a friend. And thank you for being willing to share your advice and your story.
My pleasure, man. It was really a joy to have a chance to talk with you and get to know you. Anytime.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Life of Phys Podcast. We hope you enjoyed our chat, and don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us continue to bring you content and the stories of our incredible guests. And remember to stay connected with us on all social media platforms. It's at LIFE_OF_PHYS, and discover even more stories from the community over competition movement. Have a great day.